So the Chintamani stone comes from Uncharted 2, and the way this works is that upon activation, the player is imbued with the ability to revive their teammates. In the moment-to-moment of U4 multiplayer, we've introduced the down state, and those who are familiar with The Last of Us may recognize that. And what the Chintamani stone allows you to do is that when you purchase it using the in-game store, you're able to revive your allies instantaneously within a certain range while you're holding L1 and R1. It's a little hard to see in the video. You see that little ring that flashes there. And actually, before Paris Game Show, it functioned entirely differently. Vinith, you want to go into why it's so much better now?
Yeah, so we made some pretty big changes. Previously, the Chintamani stone followed the user who used it. We found out that wasn't working well because as a support player, you kind of want to hang back and support your team, whereas when it's centered on you, you sort of have to be at the center of the fight, which is not very conducive to a support kind of strategy. So we've changed it to be now a ranged ability, so you cast it at a location and it revives people at that location. So as you see in this video, you can kind of hang back and cover and revive your teammates. We found it works a lot better that way.
So what's the AoE radius?
Oh, sorry. Well, as you can see, it's quite big. It's good enough to get pretty much anyone that you want to get.
Why don't we go ahead and check out the Wrath of El Dorado next?
So all these mysticals are coming from, we mentioned this at Paris Games Week, but all these mysticals are coming from the elements in each of the Uncharted games.
Correct.
So far.
Correct. The mysticals span the Uncharted universe, if you will. We're actually going to reveal two today that we haven't spoken of yet, so this Twitch stream is an exclusive for those items. So what you're looking at right now is the Wrath of El Dorado. And the purpose of this mystical here is to sort of break up the enemy formation. One of the things we really tried to emphasize in the moment-to-moment of multiplayer of this game is this idea of fronts. You know, my team's on one side, the enemy team is on the other. And we saw in high-level competitive play in some of the previous Uncharted games is that teams generally would hunker down in a space and never move. And it was sort of first to blink towards the end of the match would sort of get the win. And so to break up fronts, we've sort of crafted the Wrath of El Dorado that when you throw it out into the combat field, the totem spawns that you're seeing in the video there. And it sends out these mystical spirits that track down enemies. And the Wrath of El Dorado isn't a one-hit down. It just does damage to the player, and they can get hit by multiple specters.
What's the DPS? I'm kidding. I'm going to ask all of these jerk questions the entire time.
Yeah, actually, hopefully in a later Twitch we can get into the nitty-gritty if all this stuff works. I think the next mystical we're going to show is going to be the Spirit of the Djinn. So the Spirit of the Djinn that's going to come up here in a minute is from Uncharted 3. And the way this works is that upon activation, the user is imbued with the ability to teleport or dash. In teleporting, they can't take cover, but they're able to dash around the map very quickly for a certain amount of time that you see there at the bottom left-hand corner. This mystical's particularly helpful when you're looking to close the distance, as you see in the video here, but it's also great to get away in a flash when you're outnumbered. And the next mystical, this one's a new one. This is going to be the Staff of Aramanco. The way this works here.
What's that from?
This is from the Uncharted book, The Fourth Labyrinth. The way this works is, and so we're clear, we did take a little bit of liberty with some of these mysticals for multiplayer. The way this mystical works is upon activation, a staff appears on the map that shows up on radar for both your team and the enemy team. And upon every pulse of the staff, it reveals the enemy team's location on radar. Speaking of radar, as you can see right here, this is a new element added to Uncharted 4 multiplayer. And currently the way you show up on radar is when you shoot your gun. And when you activate this staff, it shows the enemy positions on radar for a certain amount of time. And that staff can actually get destroyed by the enemy. So that location appears on their radar and they're able to go out to destroy it for some cash. And we'll cover cash here in a minute. The next exclusive mystical is going to be Indra's Eternity. This is an item that we grabbed from the Uncharted motion comic book. It was a small series that was released post Uncharted 2. And this one is one of my favorites, a lot of fun. The way this works is when the player activates it, they throw a kris or a dagger into the battlefield, and that activates an AoE that slows down the enemy team. The enemy team can get out of that AoE. They can still shoot, they can still throw their items, but they are slowed while they're in there. And this one can really have a high impact in the moment-to-moment of a fight.
You can also combine it with some of the other mysticals. Like if you have two players, one like the El Dorado, one has the...
Yeah, absolutely. That actually gets me to the point of one of the things we've really tried to do with these mysticals. I'm glad you mentioned that, Aaron. Is that we really tried to focus on synergy. What are the type of combinations that players can put together with these things? So, for example, if someone throws in Indra's Eternity and then a Wrath of El Dorado, well, that's multiplayer madness.
It's a great combination, but it's also hard to coordinate. It requires a lot of teamwork and a lot of cash, so you have to, earn it over time.
Some
Absolutely.
advanced strategy right here.
Oh yeah, no, it's
totally.
definitely present.
I want to start seeing some of those videos getting shared, that's for sure.
Absolutely.